Nick, let's talk about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I think coming into this season, Notre Dame, it's a lot of change in the landscape of the college football realm, but Notre Dame always seems to find themselves in the mix, always has, themselves at the top of that list just because of who they are as a program and what they've been in the doing in the recruiting game. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. Just Marcus Freeman, this team, always on the road, always recruiting all the time. And that leads to them getting some really interesting players. And one of those guys, I think, is quarterback Duce Knight for the 2025 class out of George County. I think this guy is going to be really interesting. And I'm not the only one because Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, also had some interesting things to say about him as well. Let's get into the article and we can talk more about it on the other side. This is from over on Fighting Irish Wire and says, although coaches aren't allowed to speak about players until they sign with their schools, that doesn't mean that they won't talk directly to recruits about how they feel about them. It seems like Notre Dame football offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock really loves what he sees from 2025 quarterback commit Duce Knight. The future Irish quarterback is currently participating at On3's Elite Series camp and got a chance to sit down with JD Pickle for an interview. During their chat, Knight admitted that Denbrock has compared him to LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels, who is just coming off winning a Heisman Trophy and being drafted number 2 overall by the Washington Commanders. I think that's some pretty high praise, and I think that alludes to some very interesting usage for Duce Knight as well. Nick, I'm curious what your thoughts on these comments are, but Notre Dame fans in the comment section below. It's been a little bit since you've had, a really exciting mobile quarterback back there in the backfield. I want to know who's maybe your favorite mobile quarterback that Notre Dame has had throughout the history of this program in the comment section below. A couple of interesting ones. Everett Golson is the name that comes to mind as well. Let us know in the comment section below who's your favorite mobile quarterback Notre Dame has had in the comments below. But Nick, what do you think about these comments about Duce Knight?
I think it's very interesting because one of the reasons you bring in a guy like Denbrock, right? Obviously, the smart offensive guy with what he did at LSU, but you bring him in also for recruiting strategies to shape an offense, to shape a scheme in terms of finding the right prospect for what you're trying to do. And I hate when people sit there and say like, oh, you'll never be able to replicate what you're able to do in terms of finding the right scheme and personnel fit. That's sort of not true, right? Because you saw Urban Meyer obviously had his Tim Tebow at Florida, but he stylistically replicated it at Ohio State, right? It's not the same kind of thing, but it can be very, very similar. You have a strategy, you have a skill set you're looking for as part of your overall team, and you can replicate it, right? That's what we've seen a number of times. Nick Saban had his style at LSU. He had a style very similar early in his time at Alabama, right? You can replicate in terms of quarterback and other positions from program to program. You may have to change your overall culture, your mindset in terms of how you're structuring the high level program, but in terms of strategy and personnel, you should be trying to replicate, especially something as successful as LSU and Jane Daniels. I think the comments involving Duce Knight are exciting, but I think it's paired very interesting with some news that broke the other day was that another quarterback from the 2026 class, we're going way out in the out years, Noah Grubbs also committed to Notre Dame. He was also recruited by Denbrock as well. Again, very stylistically similar. 6'4", 190 pounds from Florida. Good athlete, good arm. Really reminds a lot of people potentially of a Jaden Daniels mold as well. So we know Denbrock very clearly has a type. He's trying to go out and get his next Jaden Daniels. Just like Urban Meyer when he went to Ohio State was like, okay, I need to find my next Tim Tebow. Or before that, when Urban Meyer went to Florida and he was like, I need to find my Alex Smith that he had at Utah, and then he got Tebow, right? That's what Denbrock is doing here. I think it's a really smart move. He's trying to find the right quarterback, his Jane Daniels in South Bend to lead this offense. And if he can do it, and they've got two bites at the apple here, I'm curious how it all shake out. This Notre Dame team is going to be very, very good. They're going to surprise a lot of people. I know if it's Notre Dame, they're going to be good anyway. But if Denbrock can pull this off, this isn't a good team. This isn't a really good team. This is a national title kind of football team brewing in South Bend.
Yeah, Nick. And I think, like you said, this has been a great change for Notre Dame. I think Denbrock brings in a lot of great stuff. And I think the ability for him to come out here and just find his guys, get them into this program. And like you said, you don't always have to change something if it's not broken. If you have a type of quarterback that you like, that you've obviously had great success with, go ahead and try to find a couple bites at the apple of that guy. maybe Knight's the guy, maybe Grubb is the guy. But if you bring in a couple of guys, I'm sure somebody is going to stick and be that guy that you want them to be. And it's like I said, Notre Dame, I think they're a great team, but they haven't really had somebody that's been as dynamic in a while. I think Sam Hartman, 123 rushing yards last season, not anything to, shake a stick at. You look at Ian Book, that was a guy, he did some interesting stuff, but 400 rushing yards ish was the most he got. These are guys that are athletes, I think, are going to be able to use their legs to move the pocket. These are guys that are going to be able to be dynamic playmakers like Jaden Daniels. When Jaden Daniels was on the field, it was almost kind of like Lamar Jackson-esque, where he could really do anything at any point in time, but he didn't always, just tuck it and run. He used his legs to extend the play. He was able to make plays with his legs when he needed to, but he also had a heck of an arm as well. So I think if Denbrock likes these guys and he's bringing them in to this new Notre Dame offense, I would be excited if I'm a Notre Dame fan, because this means we're going to see some exciting football coming up from this offense. And I think it's going to help you get into that college football playoff and potentially get yourself into national championship contention.